everybody, welcome tonight to this episode of Back Porch Conversations. I'm excited. Whether this is your first time with us or you're with us every single week, we're excited and honored that you take the time to listen tonight. The whole purpose of what we do here at Back Porch is to share people's stories and experiences, to recognize that we didn't all grow up the same, we don't all live the same, and so we get the opportunity just to lean in and listen to one another. And I think it's one of the most important things that we get to do, and we recognize that unity can happen if we'd stop talking so much and start listening a little bit more and just being sensitive to that. So with that in mind, I have with me my buddy Corbin Hogue, representing from Douglasville tonight. And we'll talk a little bit more about his story and how he got here to start with. And I want to just know that we start the same way every week on purpose, because we want to share the vision behind what God has given us here. So I want to do just that. I want to share why we do what we do here. A few months back, I was reading through the book of Mark. And in Mark chapter 2, there's this incredible story of this man who is paralyzed. And he's paralyzed, but he has these friends who decide they want to do something about it. I want to read this story. It's in Mark chapter 2, in verse 2, where I start here. It says, "Soon the house where Jesus was staying was so packed with visitors that there was no more room, even outside the door. And so while he was preaching God's word to them," so he's preaching to this crowd, "4 men arrived carrying a paralyzed man on a mat." Wow. And they couldn't bring him to Jesus because of the crowd. So they dug a hole in the roof above his head, and they lowered the man on his mat right down in front of Jesus. And Jesus goes on to heal this guy. But here's what really sticks out to me in this story. The 4 men that carried this paralyzed man, they weren't paralyzed. They didn't understand this man's journey. They didn't understand his pain. They didn't understand his difficulty and personal experience. But they did know that they had an opportunity to hear his pain, to listen, and to do something about it. And it's incredible to me that these 4 men took time out of their day to listen, to learn, and then to take action. That's exactly what we're trying to do here. We want people to listen and to learn and to lean in, but then also that there will be action that's taken on the other side of tonight. And so that's exactly what we get the opportunity to do. So why do we bring people to my back porch? And by the way, my man Corbin, the first one ever to be on the back porch.
I'm on the back porch.
You're on my real back porch.
This is amazing. This is amazing.
Why do we do it? Because here's the thing. The back porch is where a lot of the most intimate conversations you ever have happen. Corbin, in order to get to my back porch, you had to come through all my mess. You had to hear and interact with my family. My kids got to see you. My dog got to jump on you. My wife got to see you. But you also saw all the dirty, all the mess. I didn't get to hide anything because you walked all the way through my house. And so with that in mind, we recognize that the back porch is really the most intimate place for this to happen. And that's exactly what we plan to do tonight. We want to get real. We want to have people be transparent and feel open and honest. And so we bring them and we invite them to this back porch for that very reason. And we believe that this is a conversation worth having, as a conversation worth taking our time week in and week out to do. And so with that in mind, I want to take this opportunity before we go too much further, and I'll let Corbin share his story, for you guys out there to take a minute to like and to share, subscribe, and to take this opportunity to lean in and really kind of prepare yourself for what God's going to speak tonight, because I know it's going to be a really powerful time. And you're probably going to hear some thunder because Corbin and I are praying away the rain right now.
Yes, you pray with us.
On my back porch. And so if you see us take off running, it's okay. We're just trying to save the camera gear from outside. But hey, before we do all that, let's lean in. Corbin, man, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're all about and how you ended up here in the Douglasville area.
So, dude, this is first dope. I'm on your back porch. This is amazing. But my name is Corbin Hogue. I have a beautiful wife by the name of Kratisha, and I have 3 boys, Austin, Avery, and Asher Chase. They are my world. They are my life. But outside of being a husband and a father, I'm just a guy who loves Jesus, and I love telling people about him. I currently serve as the student pastor at Crossroads Church in Douglasville, Georgia. Shout out to Crossroads students. I love y'all and all my Crossroads family watching. But yeah, man, I'm just a man who love God, love Jesus, and just love my family. And I love shoes, by the way. Yes, yeah, you do. I love shoes. I love chicken. I love hats. I love fashion, like all of those things. But I'm just a normal guy, man, who just love people and just love telling people about Jesus. And I love my wife and my boys again.
That's so good. So we're going to lean into all of those things here in a few minutes. But before we do, we kind of like to start the conversation the same way every week that we have somebody on is this. When for you was that first moment when you realized that racism was real? I mean, what did that do to you? How did that change you? I mean, what was it for you that was kind of a moment?
I'm going to be very transparent with the people watching as well as because me and you had this conversation.
Yeah.
I get very nervous about sharing this stuff because like I told you, sometimes it's like reliving trauma. Like you really don't know it's trauma until like you just start doing some deep soul searching and then you find out like, dang, like that was real trauma that took place. And then too, like I just never really talked about it in kind of in this format. So I may be a little bit nervous, but I'm just going to share. But 2 stories quickly come to mind. Born and raised, mom and dad always told us that kind of watch what you do when you're around people. Never walk into the stores with your hands in your pocket and all of these type things. But me and my brother was coming from the movies one night, and we was walking, and quickly a cop like pulled us over as we was walking. He flashed his lights, and he came up close to me, like real close with the flashlight, and I'm shaking, like, oh my gosh, we're not doing anything wrong. We just literally walking back from the movie theater back to my grandmother's house, and like he this close to me, and he was like, how old are you, boy? And so he used the word boy, and so like I'm tensing up, remembering all of these conversations that my grandmother told me, my mom and dad told me, and to see the panic on my younger brother's face, it just paralyzed me because he was wanting to run, and I'm like, John, do not run. We haven't did anything wrong, but this is really kind of where like started us because it was just one cop and then like 5 more police officers like rushed us, and we just walking home. And so after he asked me for my ID said I was 18 years old, and he looked at me and he said, you need some chin hair, boy.
Wow.
And then that moment, like they all left, and my brother and I was just like, what do we do now? And so we just continued to just keep walking, and for us that was like, what in the world? But that's just like one story that I really remember that was like, dang, that was like very traumatic. But then I found this in the church, and that's when it really broke my heart. For me, it was like, dang, I know what happens in the world because we had this incident walking back from the movies, and we didn't do anything wrong. We complied with everything they asked, but fast forward to like when I fully gave my life to Christ, and I'm just on fire for Jesus, telling people about him at my job at Chick-fil-A, flipping chicken in Gaffney, South Carolina, Chick-fil-A there. And so I ended up turning the break room kind of into like a time where we doing devotionals and things like that. And it was a girl who was working there was like, Corbin, like our church is actually looking for a youth pastor.
Awesome.
Can you please like apply for it? And she was a Caucasian female. And so I was already having this stirring in my heart to like really fight for racial reconciliation within the body. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. Like I'm going to apply to be the youth pastor at this predominantly white church. So I did. Me and the pastor fell in love with each other, and he loved my personality. He was like, man, we can really do some things within the community in Gaffney if you come on. And I'm like, yes, let's do it. This is all I've been talking about forever. And we get to the last interview, and like I'm for sure thinking I got this. Like I'm talking about, I wish you would have been in there. Like we hugging each other. Like this is gonna be beautiful for Gaffney. And later on, I get a phone call. He was like, hey, can you come back to the church? I want to tell you something. And I was like, okay. And when I get there, he has tears in his eyes. And I'm like, what in the world? Like, what's wrong? Did somebody die? Like, what happened? Because he was just like, just red and crying. And he said, first thing he said to me, please don't run my church name through the mud. And I was like, why would I do that? And he looked at me and said, I want to hire you to be our youth pastor, but our deacons don't want to hire you because the color of your skin. And so for me, I was like, I had this incident in the world that like literally paralyzed me, but then I find it as well as in the body of Christ that one of the safest places on earth. But this person looking at me and telling me, not because I wasn't qualified, but my skin disqualified me from actually operating in what God has called me to do.
Which is insane. Obviously, there's this kind of expectation in the world, but it's so gut-wrenching because you're not the only story. In a couple weeks, we're going to hear another one of something similar that happens just like this, and my heart breaks every time to know that he could have easily just come back and said, but like I want to see the positive here in one way because I feel like he wouldn't have told you that if he wasn't fighting
Fight
for you
for it.
too.
Yeah.
Because he could have just said, Corbin, we didn't think you were smart enough, so we're not. But he didn't. Like, that transparency, I feel like, was a great sign of leadership on his behalf.
Yeah.
But it's such a broken experience for us to look and see the fact that somebody can look at you and say, because of how you look, we don't think you're good enough for this job. We don't think you're qualified enough for this job. And I just wonder, like, did that for you shift and change the way that you presented yourself, the way that you carried yourself, the way that you dressed, the way that you acted, the way that you talked to people? I mean, did that create in you kind of this need to shift who Corbin Hogue was?
Dang, this is hard to share.
I know.
But I felt like I had to change my identity on who I was.
Yeah.
There's a guy who we work with at Chick-fil-A. His name is Dan. Dan is African American male, and like all Caucasians like gravitated to him. So in my mind, I was like, dang. So they can't accept me for me. Maybe they'll accept me if I look like Dan. And Dan was the guy that wears the Hollister jeans, the button up, the khaki pants sometimes, and the Sperry's. So I'm thinking, okay, they can't accept this, so maybe they accept that. And so I'm being honest, like I literally changed my whole wardrobe. And then I end up having to find out I have to wear glasses, and so I was like, maybe that kind of fit the mold now. Now I'm just like this nerdy black guy that would be accepted. And I even tried to change my personality. I tried to change because I'm very like energetic. People who know me, like I love people, so I'm like, I'm loud. Like that's just who I am.
Yeah.
But through that, I was like, maybe I just need to tone it down and just be, hey guys, how are you doing? And so that made me change kind of my whole wardrobe. And even now, like we joke, I can't believe I'm saying this, but we joke like I used to be one way with my black friends, and then I was a different way at Chick-fil-A, all through that traumatic experience.
Wow.
So it literally made me like shift my identity and say, dang, like maybe this is what is accepted. Even to my years, like I know we'll probably go there, but how I ended up serving in Greenville for a season, I felt like I still had to be that guy to be accepted because I was a part of a predominantly white ministry that I had to wear the khakis. And I studied communicators that were bouncing from black audiences to white audiences. And so I was like, maybe if I'm like this guy, like the North Point model, that's what we used to say. If I could be like the guy at the North Point church, then I would be accepted. And so I literally went through a season of that where, like, I'm being very transparent with you. I just now coming to Crossroads have been comfortable with being who I am again. And that happened to me when I was 20 years old. Like I'm 29 right now. And just now I've gotten comfortable with wearing my hats again, wearing my Jordans, wearing my shoes, and just being okay with who I am in this predominantly white space now.
It felt like in this moment that you almost had, well, not you almost, you had to imitate something that wasn't even who you truly were.
Yeah.
And even then, and I'm going to dig in a little bit deeper to say that you were probably, if I know you, because I know the way you teach and I know your heart, telling people, don't wear masks, don't be fake, don't imitate the world, don't imitate all these other things. But yet, you know, living kind of this tension in your own world.
Wow. And I think many people who know me, crap, I'm about to cry. I didn't think I was going to go here, bro, but the reason why I'm so passionate about God can't heal what you don't reveal, because of that. Like, I literally had to become something that I wasn't, not even in the world, because the world accepted me for who I was. This party, like, person who loved people, but it was when I came into the church that I had to put this mask on because I chose to fight for racial reconciliation in a different space, in a different culture. And so that's why I'm like very passionate. That's crazy. Why are you making me do this? But it's amazing. Like, it's the first time that I'm actually really talking about it. So I thank you for that, bro.
I you know, it's so incredible to me because, you know, we've sat and had a ton of conversations over the last few months, really, because we've only been really serving together on this staff for the last 5 months, I think. I don't even know. But I feel like in that time, it's almost like we got kind of thrust into closeness because of a way that America's been heading, right? With
Yeah.
a lot of the racial tension that's occurred over the last 5 months, the conversations that we as a staff, which I applaud our staff for being willing to have those conversations, and be open to having those conversations. But you've shared so much, and I told you, in our pre-meeting when we were talking, like, that has impacted me, and we're going to kind of dig into a lot of those things. But let's start kind of with where your heart is. And I know, like, as you shared at the beginning, a lot of your world, apart from Jesus, most of your world is your family.
Yeah.
And you shared some stories with me that have impacted me greatly based on that alone, and how your sons are watching you and being raised. So talk a little bit, if you will, kind of about some moments that you've had with your boys about just this very issue, and how you've had to have hard conversations with them, even though none of the three of them are over 5 years old at this point. But they're still beginning to recognize and see, wait, something's not right. So share a little bit about how that's happened over these last few months.
Yeah. So two stories like really pop out. Right after the murder of George Floyd, we got pulled over by the cops, and I'll never forget it, bro. When we got pulled over, my 4-year-old Austin said, "Daddy, the police behind us, they're gonna kill us." And me and my wife never have these conversations. Chris, I'm being honest, and with the people watching, we don't have these conversations. But when all of this kind of hit the roof, like, many people started calling my phone, so they heard me kind of like talking. But the first thing that came to my 4-year-old son's mind was, "Daddy, like, they're gonna kill us."
Wow.
And so I was like, no, like, all polices are amazing. And there's a story, please don't let me forget it. I want to share how God healed that. My perspective of the police, because I respect the police and I love them. But just bring it back to that story. My 4-year-old son was like, "Daddy, they're going to kill us." And I was like, "No, son, like, police are here to protect us." And I'm still having to have that conversation. But with us reading the book that we're reading as a staff, Becoming a Bridge by Latasha Morris, and it was a chapter there where she got to talking about colorism. That how she was raised that the lighter your skin, like, the chances that you'll win in life. And I've never read a book where a person could actually put into words kind of what I've been feeling for so long. That's why I respect her and I respect the book, because I was telling you this. For me, all of this stuff revolves around something personal. So it's not intellectual for me.
Right.
All of my stories are very, like, personal.
It's your experience.
Yes, my experience. So to find a person that could put this on paper, like, really just, like, opened my eyes. But there was a section in there when she was talking about colorism, and my wife recently asked me before we read this chapter. She said, "Corbin, like, we have 3 boys. Austin is our oldest, Avery is our middle child, and Asher Chase is the baby." And she was like, "Corbin, why do you hold on to Avery so much? Like, why do you, like, just gravitate to him and hold him?" And I told her after we read that chapter, I said, "I understand why now, because I know Avery's life would be a little bit harder because his skin is a little bit darker, like, than his brother's. Because my oldest, his skin is very light, and my baby boy, his skin is very light too. But Avery's skin complexion is just like mine. And so when I hold Avery, when I hold all of my boys, I see myself. But when I really hold Avery, I just hold him a little bit tighter, because I'm like, I had that same experience because my skin was a little bit darker. And so even myself, I had to, like, really kind of do some heart surgery there, because it just reminded me, like, dang, I just don't want him to have to go through what I went through, because his skin is a little bit darker than his brother's.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, like, because we're kind of, like, digging into that for just a minute. Like, you've kind of taken that now, and you've worked within the church. For a long time now. And you've kind of made this commitment, because I think you do recognize that obviously you recognize you've lived the fact that there is some challenges and difficulties in that. So, but you could have just as easily said, "You know what, forget it. I'm just going to go work in a predominantly black church and be done with it." But you made a choice and a decision, and I think personally that your boys are watching this decision. They're going to learn from what you're doing. They're going to see, hey, Daddy's willing to stand what you would call in the middle. You'd stand in the gap to say, I want to kind of bring kind of this healing together. So let's lean in for just a couple minutes to talk about, what does that look like for you? How do you do that? How do you stand in the middle? How do you create an opportunity for that healing and reconciliation.
Yeah, for me, I'm being honest. I posted something when all of this racial tension first spiraled in the world. I said I hate that my skin color is a threat. I hate that people would champion the way I put it was people will rather speak of people rioting and looting, but they won't talk about the police that killed, George Floyd and all of those things. But at the end of all of that, I said, I still believe in unity. I still believe in diversity, because here's the reason. I believe if Jesus was here on this earth, that he would be standing in the middle, that he would care for the people who are being marginalized, and he would also care for the people who are doing the marginalizing, however you say that. Like, I believe that Jesus would be there fighting in the middle for all people. Many people don't agree with the word middle, but I do. I feel like right now Jesus cared for the person who killed George Floyd, and he cared for George Floyd and his family. And so as I just began to see that throughout Scripture, I began to devote my life to, hey, I'm going to stand in the middle. And this is what it looked like practically for me, that in many cases I have to put down my preference and pick up the kingdom of God.
Yeah, that's good.
That I have to put down what I want to do in the moment, because I'm going to be honest, these past couple of months been rough because I've been suppressing what I want and to pick up like the kingdom, because I know at the end of the day, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Like, that's what the middle looks like, reminding yourself that we are in this world, but we're not of this world, and we fight different. And it's been a war. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I've mastered it, but I would still continue to stand here and to fight to bring both cultures together, because I believe Revelation 7 and 9, that, listen, every nation, tribe, and tongue will be there worshiping the name of Jesus. It's not a black Jesus, it's not a white Jesus. Like, we'll all be at his feet worshiping his name, not Jesus, but heaven. Like, we'll all be worshiping his name. So that's kind of where I've chose to stand. And I'm being honest, like, I've caught flack from white people, I've caught flack from black people. This is a quick story. This is like, we was in Greenville at the church we was currently serving at, and it was me and my former pastor. He served as a chaplain for the Greenville Police Department. This is right when the Dallas shooting happened. And he called me at 6 o'clock that morning and said, hey, I'm scratching the message, me and you will come on stage and talk. And when he came to talk, he came dressed in his full like police uniform, gun, badge, and everything. And there we had a conversation, and we made both sides mad, because we said the only flag that we will raise is the banner of Jesus. And that's what I've given my life to, and that's kind of what the message I want to give the world. Put down your preference and pick up the kingdom.
And you've seen the challenges of even this, because I know, like, we talked a little bit about the stories, even in your current role here at Crossroads, where I don't want to give the ending, so I don't want to spoil it. But you know where I'm going.
I got you.
Even how you aren't able to really, you have to wrestle in the middle even here in that tension. So share, you can share whichever you want to out of this, but you know where we're headed with this. So so share a little bit about what you're talking about.
So you're talking about Drewski's.
Yeah, let's do it.
Came on staff, me and another guy served together as student pastors. I like to call, his name is Daniel Drewski. If you watching, I love you, brother. But Drewski is a tall white male. I used to call him, and I still call him Captain America, because he just give you that look, like he just, the studious, like, where's the jacket, sports jacket, and all of that. So we serving in the role together as student pastors, and many people, when we go out, they always kind of like scratch their head, like, why are you two together? Like, you two do not belong together, and but we are closest of friends. But we end up going to Goodwill because we had a 90s party that we was putting on. And Drewski, I'm telling you, you see him is just casual all the time. Like jeans and a sports jacket and like dress shoes. And he was like, Corbin, dress me for the 90s party. And I was like, let's do it. So I took him to Goodwill. But as we was checking out, Drewski had on a sports jacket and I had on like some Timberland boots and a black jacket. And because I love boots. Like I like being fresh. But we in there, and the clerk looks at me and Drewski, and she asks us this question. Is Drewski my parole officer?
Wow.
This is a white lady now.
Yeah.
Across the counter, and we both looked at each other like, did that just happen? She assumed, because we walked in the store together, that he was my parole officer. And so it's many stories. We was Dang, I want to share this. Do I? No. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay. We was getting ready to put out signs for the graduating class that just graduated, and the student team, we was going to put signs in every student's yard who is a senior, and this overwhelming of emotion came over me, and I was like, I can't go into the neighborhood. And shout out to J.O. He's another person who I love. He looked at me and said, how about you ride with me? Because here's the sobering reality. Drewski was my protection. Crap.
Wow.
Can't believe I'm saying that out loud, man. But we had this conversation. But Drewski was my protection. Yeah. And all of these white spaces that I was in Crossroads, like as long as he was with me, I felt protected and I felt covered. Because he knew my heart. He knew me. And he looked past my skin, but I still know my skin is a threat. And those are still some of the things. And J.O. was like, Corb, I'll be that for you. He said, just get in the car with me, because I was nervous and afraid to go love on the students that I talk to every week, to go put a sign in their yard, because I don't know what their community is going to view me as. And J.O. was like, I'll be that protection for you.
You've even felt that not at the church as far as the people, but I know you shared with me, like just even in leaving the church and having incidences where even in practical jokes. And I think that's like at the end of the day, like people have to recognize that everybody's been raised differently, they've experienced life differently. So what might be a practical joke for one person could be a terrifying experience for another person. So I'd love for you to share that story and just kind of, because I think it's important to see for you, because we kind of even had that moment where you were like, hey man, I don't really feel comfortable driving, and I was like, man, what's going on? And now that you're sharing these stories with me, I'm able to see your pain, but now I can like walk with you through that. Do you know what I mean?
That's
like
crazy that you could pick up on this stuff. But crap. So serving it here in Douglasville as a student pastor, we got into like a running joke. But the first one I want to tell is like because we leave late at night on Wednesdays, because we just have student service and things of that sort. And so at first it turned into a joke that Corb, you scared to drive home at night. And I was like, well, now that you say this, like there is a fear of me driving home late at night. And one of our volunteers was like, well, I'll follow you home, like every night if you need me to. And then I was like, no, like I'm being honest. This is not a joke. This is like, I have full-on anxiety when I'm driving home. FaceTiming my wife, because you know in Georgia they tell you like you got to prop your phone up. So I have my wife on FaceTime, and intentionally I put my Crossroads badge like on my rearview mirror, on my mirror, just in case I get pulled over, and I can tell the police, just because we're a very prominent church in the community, that I was coming from Crossroads Church. And so, like, that's kind of like how I have to ride. Like, I still do it. I did it last night. Like, I did it last night coming from students. Like, I was just nervous. Had my wife on FaceTime, had my badge here. But I remember one night, we have, like, a police that kind of sit in the parking lot. And he literally pulled up and with his lights on one night. And the fear that came over my body. And J.O. and Daniel was with me, and they started laughing. They was like, dude, you got scared for real? And then it clicked with Drewski. Like, wait, like, it's not like a joke no more. So he was like, y'all chill. Like, y'all chill. And so then, like, when the cop was like, it was a cop that we knew, but after he left, he was like, bro, I'm so sorry that the anxiety that builds up in you. And I know the cop. Like, the cop is amazing. And I do want to say this, and I know we're going to segue here, but God has literally healed my heart with that through...
Let's lean into that, because I know that happened even within a church context there, an opportunity that you had to serve in that. So I think we can, we know as we were talking, we can often get locked into the negative. But there's also, as you said, like been some healing that's come, because as you stand in the middle, it's not just in the church world, but it's even within that police world that you've been able to have this opportunity to almost defend and equally kind of say, hey, we do need this, but also let's not hate everybody in the same breath. So talk a little bit about how that healing came, because I think it's an important narrative and an important story that might, for somebody who's listening or watching, be a healing moment for them as well. So talk a little bit about what God did there.
First it was it was my church back home in South Carolina at Envision Church. My former pastor, Robbie Hall, who I'm forever grateful for, man. I think I could cry. Like, just, I don't believe I would be where I'm at today if it wasn't for him.
Yeah.
And like I stated before, he served as a chaplain for the police department. And so quickly, that was his relationship with the police force, so it quickly became mine because I served there at the church. And so we had police officers who attended our church. And one of the guys who served, he was like a deputy. His name was Wes. I still call him to this day Uncle Wes. So Uncle Wes served with me in our student ministry. He was a white guy who was a police officer. But we quickly developed a bond because of students, and he served with me. So we went on all the crazy youth trips together and all of that. But through that, we developed a relationship real quick. And we still have this stitching that he had on his uniform that he gave to me to give to my son when he turned 5 years old. To give to Austin, and we still have it to this day. But through that relationship, God used Uncle Wes to show me that all cops aren't bad.
That's right.
That there are cops who love Jesus, who faithfully every single morning wake up and put their badge on. And we have friends who are African American, who are Hispanic, who wake up every single morning and put that badge on, and they care about people. But God used Uncle Wes to heal that inside of me. As well as I had the opportunity to speak at a camp that was hosted by the police department in Greenville. Yeah. And there, a place that I never thought that I would be standing in preaching and telling my story to, surrounded around all of these cops sitting around the wall, they all in the back cheering for me.
Yeah, awesome.
And it was like, wow. And that, they did not know me, but they was cheering that I was sharing the gospel. And this is what they didn't know, that as I was sharing the gospel, God was still healing a part of my heart. And it wasn't through a message, but it was through an action or demonstration with all of these cops that was lying on the wall. And so that's how I know, like, but it does take time, because if that's been taught to you, that will be embedded inside of you that all cops are bad. But God used Uncle Wes, Robbie Hall, all of these men to heal my heart. And so that's why I forever champion the police.
That's good.
I forever will.
I love it. I want to, as we were kind of coming down towards the end, one of the things that we talked about a few weeks ago, actually I think it was last Tuesday, we were sitting in staff and we were just talking, and you brought out a point that I told you in the moment, and I've told you all, I feel like every day since then, that has just like latched into my brain. You made a statement that for many of us sitting in the room, and we work on a predominantly white staff. Now we have a diverse staff. We have, and by diverse, I don't just mean we have some black people. We have black, we have Hispanic, we have old, we have young. Like, we've got a very, I feel like a really great diverse team of people that bring different perspectives into the room. But you made this statement. You said that for many people sitting in the room who are predominantly white, you get to end this conversation, right? We're doing this Be the Bridge conversation, walking through Latasha Morrison's book. You get to end this conversation, and then you get to kind of turn it off. That for you guys in the room, a lot of you, that racism is a conversation you have, or maybe like a couple of moments, or a couple of months, or a couple of weeks of fighting, but then you kind of get to go home and you don't have to think about it again. Or you get to go to the store and you don't have to think about it again. Or you get to go drive to your car, you don't got to think about it again. But you, and for many people of color, brown, black, it doesn't matter, don't get that chance. Don't get that moment. Can you lean into that for just a minute and share what that looks like?
And I remember that conversation because it's so, I love y'all, so I was able to like bear my heart in that moment. But it's that luxury of having the opportunity to turn it on and turn it off, that I don't have that luxury, that many people of color, we don't have that luxury. Because for me, it's stories like what I shared with Drewski and going into stores and us being pulled over, that all of this anxiety, it doesn't go away, because like we just know at any moment we can be looked at as a threat. And like going into grocery stores, even going into stores, I'm constantly having this conversation with my boys. Hey, make sure, Austin, do not put your hands on your pocket. Make sure you stay in the car. Like even my wife, to be a female, like she is working on like making sure her appearance doesn't look a certain way. Even for me, like I don't drive with a hat on. Like, I get nervous if I have a hat on. I'm like, wait, let me take my hat off. Because that's stuff that, like, even when I come out the house, what do I have on? What do I have on? Even if I'm just going in the store, there's no just throwing on the basketball jersey with no shirt underneath. It's like I always have to look my best, even when I'm just going to pump gas. Because for me and for many people of color, at the drop of a hat, we can be looked at as a threat. And that's what I mean by many people. We can have the conversations in the room, but you guys have the luxury of saying, all right, we'll pick this up next Tuesday.
Yeah.
But for us, is crap. Even that Tuesday, then right after we go to another meeting, we still thinking about it. And then when we leave the
doors,
we
go to lunch, we got to think about it.
Yeah.
We go buy some at Walmart.
You got to think about it. And that's many of our cases. Like, in youth ministry, you buying all of these things.
Yeah.
And so I intentionally, like, hey, let me get some volunteers to go do this.
Yeah.
Just because when I'm walking in Sam's, like, I don't have my ID on the back, like, or my picture on the back of the card. It's somebody else. So I'm like, what they gonna do if they look at, like, I know that's protocol, but for me, that's since so much anxiety. Like, dang, would they believe I work at a church? Like, right. I don't have that luxury of just cutting it off. So.
And I've seen that go south. I'll tell you the story after this because it's not my story. It's not my time to share. But but I've seen it in real life in 2017. Where we sent one of our female staffers who was on staff, who was African American, who went out to Sam's to buy something for us, and they told her no.
Wow.
Because they didn't believe she worked at the church. She didn't have any. We didn't have ID badges like we have at the church. She said, so I had to come back. I had to go out to Sam's and buy it myself. And I seen it, and in that moment, I was like, well, I don't ever have to think about this. Like, I just go out. My face isn't on that card any more than anybody else's. I could have just stolen it from some dude in the street. But you know what I mean? Like, there is those moments where and I think I even shared this when you said it on Tuesday. That I've never thought about the fact that I don't have to think about it. As bad as that is, like, I don't put myself in the plight of other people and the challenges that they have to face, and that's the whole point of what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be able to sit in your pain for a minute. I want to be able to empathize with you. I want to be able to sit in knowing your hurts, because it's in that I'm changed in the way that I treat people, in the way that I talk about people, in the way that I address people, in the way that I fight for people. I don't drive by a car pulled over anymore and just go, I bet that guy's fine. I drive by and go, is that guy good? Like, because it shifts my perspective. But you have to diversify your table.
Wow.
Like, you have to put other people at the table who are sharing different life experiences than what you are, or you're never going to understand, why is that guy upset about this thing right now? Well, because that's been his life journey.
Yeah.
So it's just so different for us. So I want to wrap up, because I feel like, man, you are a dude who I've learned. I told you already, like, I'm learning from you every day. I feel like we've been talking a lot about listening to the Spirit and understanding, and you just are a guy who is very wise for being as young as you are, and I appreciate that, and I respect that, and I honor that. And I want to give you an opportunity to share a challenge, like some way that we can tangibly take a next step to say, this is what it looks like for us to walk and to learn to grow. What is that? What do you feel like you should share just in that moment of challenge today?
Because I prayed about this, man. I pray that us as believers recognize that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. That at the end of the day, the moment that you start a relationship with Jesus, you quickly move from walking in the flesh to now walking in the Spirit. Wow. And apart from God, we can do nothing. So with the Spirit of God living on the inside of you, with the Holy Spirit living inside of you, that's your ticket to learn how to empathize with other people. That we can't really do this in our flesh, man. Right. Like, by the time we try to do it in our flesh, now we offended. But if you are walking in the Spirit, the fruits of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, and all of those things. So I believe that the body of Christ, that's who I'm talking to. The body of Christ, lean into the Spirit, because apart from Him, you will not be able to walk this walk. And two, I want to invite every last one of you to not fight the way the world fights.
Come on.
Like, we can't fight. 2 Corinthians 10, like, you cannot fight. We don't wage war as the world does, but we fight in the Spirit. And so that's just really my encouragement to every last one of you who are watching this. And also, just join me in the middle. Like, come join me where you don't pick a side, but you stand in the middle and you put down your preference and you pick up the kingdom. Because that's what's going to really make the change. Because outside of Jesus, there is no change. We're all walking in the flesh, and I just pray that Christians get back to being devoted more to the Spirit of God and Jesus than we are a political party or even the color of our skin. So that's on both sides. That's why I say I offend everybody. Everybody get it. Because many people are choosing politics over people and skin color over Christ. And no, we stand in the middle where we value and we respect our political leaders, and we empathize and we hurt with those who hurt, and we mourn with those who mourn.
That's good. And I appreciate, first of all, your willingness to be transparent. We talked about the challenge that it is for you, because there is such a proclivity, such a desire to kind of suppress the pain and the trauma that you've experienced in the past. So for you to be willing to step up, I know that that's not an easy thing for you to do, because you're having to really navigate a lot of feelings and emotions and things that you don't talk about in this moment. And I appreciate your willingness to be able to do that, your willingness to be able to be transparent in that moment, because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this conversation is going to impact people. So I appreciate that. And I always invite people. I recognize that this conversation is not short term. This is a long term conversation. So before we wrap up completely, I wonder if there's some resources that you might be able to toss our way that we could learn from.
Yeah, I told you, I don't want to be the Jesus juke guy, but I'm being honest. I've literally put down the books, and while I respect all of them, Woke Church by Eric Mason, all of these people, Latasha, I've literally had to put those down and put my face back in the Bible.
That's good.
To really say, hey, okay, God, what do you say about love? How do I supposed to love? And that's what I recommend to everybody, that you begin to connect with the Spirit once again through your word, because it's the Bible that it said that the word is like a double-edged sword that can cut your heart. It can cut all of these spaces. And so I just encourage people to read what Jesus prayed. That his number one prayer was for the church to be one. Revelation 7 and 9, like all of these, go back to the greatest commandment of them all. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself, and meditate on that and allow that to penetrate your heart and see what comes out of that.
That's so good. Yeah, John 17. I mean, that's a great passage. I feel like the Lord's telling us to wrap it up because it is getting real dark up in here. Thank you guys for tuning in. Remember to fight for learning and humility, to stand alongside one another, to learn, to grow, and to see God do some incredible things. Thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. Come back next week. We've got Superior Court Judge Bo McClain talking about how he's using his platform and privilege to shift the way that, oh man, I feel like it's about to come. I know it's coming. I'm trying to move as fast as possible. But I know he's using his platform and privilege to really shift the way that people who are arrested on drug offenses and things like that are able to find true healing. And y'all, I promise you, it is so, so good. So tune in next week, 9 o'clock, right here. Love y'all. Have a great night, Corbin. Thank you, bro.
Oh, yeah, bro.